Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the SecurityBridge webinar. We want to talk to you about our latest acquisition, CyberSafe, and how we plan to expand our security capabilities by integrating the CyberSafe TrustBroker product into our portfolio. My name is Holger Hügel. I'm heading the product management at SecurityBridge, and today I'm happy to have Tim Alsop with me in this call. Hello, Tim.
Hi there. Thank you for the introduction. So my name is Tim Alsop. I was the owner and managing director of CyberSafe, who, as Holger just explained, was acquired only just a few months ago. I think it was in July. So I'm going to be here today to talk to you about the TrustBroker product and how we are integrating the products together and what value that brings to you.
Wonderful. So before we start, I'd like to point to our Q&A tab on the right hand in this application. You will see there the option for you to send us questions, and we will have at the end a Q&A session where we want to go with you through those questions and try to answer them as good as possible. And so looking at the agenda, let us introduce you to SecurityBridge first and then explain why we decided to go together with CyberSafe. And then we will dive into both products to show their core and scope, and then at the end, how they integrate, how they work together to generate what we call risk-based authentication. I think a quite unique capability on the market. For sure, for those of you who are familiar with CyberSafe, like being already a customer for many years, we also want to talk about how our support process will look like as we move forward and join the forces there with the former CyberSafe team. Now let's start with SecurityBridge, and not sure, maybe some of you already know SecurityBridge. SecurityBridge has been founded, I think, more than 13 years ago, starting with looking at certain issues in the SAP basis environment, whether these are, controlling transports and securing the code that is used then further in the landscapes. But then we quickly identified that there is a big need in the market for not just having a security monitoring tool, but having a solution that helps you to identify threats in your environment. And not just identifying them, also trying to solve the root cause of those threats. Typically, they are certain configuration vulnerabilities or vulnerabilities in your custom code, or simply missing patches. And all these things and capabilities have been combined into one platform in the meantime that we provide to many customers, hundreds of customers on thousands of systems, and also together with many world-class partners that you can see here on the right hand, and it's just an excerpt of our partner ecosystem there. But we never stopped there. We always looked for expanding our capabilities, not just organically, but also through acquisitions. We did our first acquisition 2 years ago, where we acquired Protect4S, one of the other solutions in the market for SAP security, specifically for automated patching, and incorporated that into our existing portfolio. Today, we are very thrilled to talk about our acquisition that happened just a few weeks ago, actually, CyberSafe and their capabilities to provide a more mature way to authenticate users in SAP than you typically have by using standard capabilities. But more about this later on. Maybe, Tim, you want to share a little bit about the background and how it happened that we came together.
Yeah, sure. So SecurityBridge and CyberSafe started meeting each other at some trade shows, and we started talking about our products and getting to know each other, and it started to become a very interesting partnership. I think we initially gelled because we realized that we are selling to the same people at companies, and we already had some mutual customers. We are basically selling security products to SAP customers, and that's what our focus is. We're not a generic security company, so we are focusing on SAP. And I think SecurityBridge realized very quickly that authentication was very key to the security space, and so our products and solutions were complementary. And as you can see here, it says hackers don't break in, they log in. And that's just a nice way of saying how important authentication is. If you have strong authentication, you can stop most hacks. One thing that's also worth referring to is the Verizon data breach report, which comes out every year. And every year, the number of credential-based threats that have caused a data breach, a real-life data breach, are actually documented in that report. And it's going up and up and up. I haven't looked at this year's one, but I remember last year it was over 90%. So anything to do with credentials. So authentication should be, and hopefully is, a place where you want to spend a decent amount of investment to help with your security. Anyway, SecurityBridge realized that CyberSafe was a market leader after they did some research. We'd been, as CyberSafe, we were in the market for over 20 years, selling our TrustBroker product, and hopefully most of the people on this call are already CyberSafe customers. And they realized that the two companies coming together would be much better than just being a partner. We would be able to do more with the products together, and the customers would benefit from our capabilities combined. So you see here, by integrating TrustBroker with the SecurityBridge platform, instead of just being able to monitor, prevent, detect, now we're able to actually block cyber attacks. And what the cyber attacks we're talking about there are those related to authentication. So it's all very good having a monitoring tool like the SecurityBridge platform. And as Holger mentioned, there are thousands of customers who use that tool. But if you can actually stop things from happening when they are being done by somebody who's stolen some credentials, that is really the icing on the cake, I think, is probably a word that I want to mention. It's really what people want. And we've had some amazing feedback from the market since we've announced the acquisition of CyberSafe. Lots of companies out there are very excited about it and giving us some good feedback. So we're really looking forward to showing you what we've done in this webinar and talking about where we're going with this, what we're doing in the future. So
exactly.
Just to finish off, the picture is showing the two founders of SecurityBridge, Christoph and Ivan, and I'm the dude in the middle. So,
wonderful. Thank you, Tim. So let us look at these actually 3 bullet points, right? So how we prevent, how we detect, and how we actually block cyber attacks. And it actually all starts with the various attack vectors that you have when you run an SAP landscape, right? So you typically have tons of configurations there. Many of them have an impact on your security posture. So there are many recommendations, hundreds of recommendations there that should be followed to harden an SAP system so you can truly prevent a cyber attack, or let's say make it very hard for an attacker to get into your system. It also has something to do with patching the system, because known errors in the product, so the errors in the SAP code, is something attackers typically leverage, because this is public knowledge and it's very easy to exploit. So you want to make sure that your system is up to date in terms of the security nodes and the patches there. The other thing might be your custom code, right? It's very typical that SAP environments have custom applications developed by your own teams, and you want to make sure that the code there is also safe and has no vulnerabilities, at least no critical vulnerabilities there. And you see already here the first two things where we expanded. On the one hand, in the threat detection domain, where we want to make sure that you are also prepared even for 0 days attacks. There we also collaborate and partner strategically with Microsoft. And for, let's say, the last piece in this entire puzzle here, we found TrustBroker for the authentication, and to make sure that whenever someone gets into your system, the system knows literally that this is a validated user, and the user has the privileges that he or she requires at the moment to perform certain tasks. But more about this later on. So let's start first with the key capabilities of, or let's say the core security capabilities of SecurityBridge, and why their implementation in our platform is so unique. You see here the 4 pillars: to identify threats and detect them, but also to make sure that your system is ready to resist against such attacks. Because imagine you have a system with tons of configuration vulnerabilities, with many patches, critical patches that are not implemented. Such a system is very hard to defend. There are so many ways for an attacker to get into your system. And if you then turn on your monitoring capabilities to look for any little tiny activity, you will get so many events that simply you are flooded by a lot of false positives, as typically administrative actions, daily work of your administrators also cause the same events. So how can you detect critical actions from malicious actions? And this is why you need the data from all these modules, even for your threat detection. So a few examples here. Think about, you have certain vulnerable code that is used every day. You want the threat detection module to know that and to identify the execution of unsecure code and notify the administrators or take certain automated actions. The same applies also for vulnerability management. You want to know how a certain event correlates to a certain configuration in your system, so you identify potential exploit. But we will talk in a second more about these things as we dive into the product during the live demo. Let me also emphasize a few other things why SecurityBridge and with the integrated platform is so unique on the market. The one point is its coverage. So the SecurityBridge platform covers literally all different technology stacks available in SAP environments, whether this is on-prem, in the cloud, on BTP, and so on. We are committed to support them all. As I mentioned, we created a platform with many modules that are highly integrated and actually geared into each other, so they work context sensitive together and create the best user experience possible. The other thing is you can use and install the platform already within a day. We literally mean one day, simply because after the day your entire platform is installed in your landscape and the modules are active, they perform the initial scan, and you have a full visibility into the entire security posture of your landscape. But we don't stop there. It's important for us to guide you through this journey that just started after the first day, right? So as we kickstarted you with the security approach on day one, we also provide you a roadmap that is created for your environment to guide you to an step-by-step improvement of your SAP security posture and system hardening. And then in the third phase, we want to make sure that you can stay secure, right? So you can implement certain processes and integrations with other departments in your company to make sure that your SAP system and landscape stays secure. Now, let's have a look at the product. And I want to emphasize that what I will demo now is just a quick overview, actually a very brief demo here that covers the core security modules that we have. So we have in the Event Monitor app, we have threat detection events, but also all other events that are generated by all other modules, whether this is from the code vulnerability analyzer, from patch management, or from our vulnerability management module that covers security, but also compliance checks. So let us start typically with the threat detection. And you see here in this environment, at the moment, there are no critical events. Otherwise, this number will show something that is not equal to 1. And but we can also look into the past. And I've prepared a typical scenario that shows the difference between a simple security monitoring and our threat detection capabilities. A very critical action is in a productive system is using the debugger to skip certain code. And I have here a few examples that show the different usage of that authorization, right? To use the debugger, you can do different things for that. Normal things, for example, because you want to mitigate a certain issue by just changing the program flow. But what is very critical is if you want to bypass an authority check, right? So this is very critical. It also has here the highest criticality in our model. And we can dive into the details of this event. And I want to point you to certain very important aspects of the data that we are gathering. We will come later on again to this point. So we know exactly who the user is. We know exactly what his typical behavior is in terms of which is the endpoint that he's typically using, working hours, and many other things this user does. But we also know in the context of this event, you see here again the authority check bypassed, what this user did on this particular terminal. Now, this is a shared terminal. That's why you see also other users doing certain things. So let's just focus on this one and see if we see some other critical things, right? So he did already a program flow change before, right? And a few minutes later, he bypassed the authority check, right? So why was this user able to do this? Because there are certain authorizations that are configured in the system. And the other thing is, you might ask, how can we know that by just using the security audit log? Simply, we are not just using the security audit log. You cannot do what you see here by just simply scanning the audit log. You need to know the code. And let me show you how you can dive into the code and literally see what has been bypassed. You see actually the authority check here in line 11, and the user just skipped that by jumping to line 13. And this intelligence is necessary in order to differentiate between normal critical activities and malicious activities in your environment. Now, we are not letting you with this information. One thing you could do is you want to probably to validate the configuration in your environment. So let's dive from the event directly into the security and compliance monitor, there where it makes sense to look and mitigate problems with debug and replace usage. And it has to do with the authorizations that are provided in your environment. And you see here, this is a test environment where you typically see all those users. And the example that I've shown in the event monitor is from the past, so that user already has been deleted. But you see there are still 13 users that have that authorization. And you might want to deal with these things. One option is you could say, okay, for a certain user, I know he's doing a test at the moment, that's fine. I can confirm that by accepting the risk, and the system will understand that's fine, this user should have this for a certain period probably, and then this risk acceptance is recorded in your compliance report, and you will not have any trouble during the next audit. Or you want someone to take care of all these users and maybe do a cleanup here. No problem, just select them all, create an incident, assign it to a person that should take care of, and that's it. And whether you use our internal incident management tool for that, or you are integrating with your own, that's the same workflow. We support both. Now, from this detail, let's zoom out and see, probably we have more authorization issues on this system. And we will see this is the case, because this is the case with many systems, that they have issues with critical authorizations. It's very important that we only look at the critical authorization, those that can critically impact your system and create damage, right? So we cover many other use cases, everything that we know, the entire SAP security knowledge is baked into this product and available to you. And we can zoom out even further and see what else is covered in this vulnerability management module here. And you will see that we have more than 450 use cases that we cover across various domains, whether this is just authorization, SAP basis issues, and as I mentioned, also highly integrated again with the other modules. For example, I want to understand which security nodes are pending, so which patches are not in this system. And I immediately see that certain hot news are not implemented. And with a click, I get a detailed list of those security nodes that are still missing. And if I want to have even further details here, I can simply click on that security node, and I'm forwarded to the patch management module exactly at the point where I need to understand what's going on here. Obviously, in this case, I have an issue with implementing patches, so I have a technical issue here. And if I zoom out, I see that it's the entire system is impacted, and multiple security nodes are still pending for this system. Now, you can imagine this is a demo environment. We keep certain things here open to be able to show the capabilities of the product, including a full overview across the entire landscape, whether by system or by type of or severity and age, or by the staging level of your system. There are various ways for you to understand and see which issues are still open, and then you can drill down from here into the details and take the same actions as we just seen before, right? So if I want someone to take care of this patch, I just simply select that patch, create an incident, and kick off a certain process for that, right? Where applicable, we also have automated capabilities to implement patches, but this is a topic for another session. So with that, let me also finish with one very important aspect of our platform, and it is the roadmap. It's actually step number 2 after you installed our product. You simply go to the roadmap, select the system you want to look at, and the baseline that you want to use as your reference, right? So we support multiple baselines also in parallel, whether you pick up the SAP one or our full-fledged baseline, it doesn't matter. You select your baseline, and the system will create a roadmap for you that makes sure that you are mitigating those risks first that have a high exploitation risk, and at the same time are very easy to mitigate. And you see, this is a list which is dynamic. It's a live view for you on your entire landscape, and from here you can go back where we've been into the details and start working on hardening your environment. And this is very important, as it also supports a end-to-end security posture for your environment. And the final step that is missing here is the authorization. And that's why we have CyberSafe and TrustBroker for that.
Okay. So what we're showing here is a slide showing a timeline from left to right. A typical user would start when they're doing something with SAP, they'd log onto their workstation, and they can authenticate in many different ways. We're assuming it's a Windows workstation, but Mac OS is also growing in demand and usage. Lots of people use Macs. When the user logs on, they would then log into the SAP system. They may not do that straight away, but if they did, or if they logged in several hours later, you might want single sign-on, or you might want to use a stronger authentication like multi-factor authentication. So with this slide, we're showing potentially 3 different SAP systems, A, B, and C. With system A, the TrustBroker product has determined that the user needs to use single sign-on. With system B, it's determined that the user needs to use multi-factor authentication during the logon to the SAP system. Now that determination could have been done through some static information like the role assignment of the user, just checking what role they have. And that means every time that user logs onto that system, because they've got a certain role, it would trigger an MFA challenge. So it's again, it's based on very static information, i.e. the role assignment. The third system, the same as the first system, it would just use a single sign-on because there's no reason to use MFA. The reason why MFA would be done on the second system is because the user has a role that says that they've got access to confidential data. So that's a typical example of what we call policy-based authentication, because it's using a policy to decide what type of authentication to use. Could you move on to the next slide, please? So in this slide, we're now showing something which is very unique to our product. We're not aware of any other product on the market that does this with SAP. So it's called step-up authentication. What we're effectively doing is we're changing the authentication method according to risk. So a user logs on to, again, the same 3 different systems. In the second system, and rather than doing MFA during the logon, we have decided that the MFA should be triggered when they perform an action after they've logged on. So the way to explain this, the way to think about this is, let's say the user is authenticating when they log onto their workstation. That's their first authentication. They re-authenticate when they log into SAP. That re-authentication might be single sign-on. It might be entering a password. It might be multi-factor. But it's still authenticating. It's still the user proving that they are who they say they are. We are adding an extra level, if you like, which is when they perform an action after they've logged in. And that's why we call it step-up authentication, because we are, based on the risk of the data or the action that they're performing after they've logged in, we are stepping up the authentication to a stronger level. So step-up authentication effectively means, in this context, re-authenticating the user after they've logged into an SAP system. And not many people are aware that you can do this. This is, again, something very unique about our TrustBroker product. So in this example, what we're effectively doing is we're saying the user logs onto system B, but rather than doing the MFA authentication during the logon, we're actually doing it when they do something inside the SAP system that causes them to access the confidential data. So it's at the point where the action is performed rather than during the login. That's clearly a much more targeted approach, and it's very, very popular. A lot of our customers really like this capability, and it gives them a lot more control, and it's more risk-based, a little bit more risk-based than otherwise, because we're actually closer to the actual action that the user is performing. In this case, it's accessing data. In the third system, it's actually a slightly different use case. Rather than being accessing data, it's actually the user is performing an administrative action. So they're performing a task, could be a transaction, for example, that is actually something that an administrator normally does. So this is what step-up authentication is. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So on the left, these are the static policy-based capabilities that the TrustBroker product has as a standalone product. So as Holger has explained about the SecurityBridge Platform, the SecurityBridge Platform was the original SecurityBridge product. Now we have 2 products in the company because of the TrustBroker product from CyberSafe. And the CyberSafe TrustBroker product is effectively described on the left-hand side. This product can trigger an MFA challenge based on simple things that are very static, that don't change, things like a role assignment of a user. As I explained earlier, we could perform an MFA challenge based on the fact that the user has access to administrative actions. They might be a security administrator, in which case you might want to trigger MFA because they're a security administrator inside the SAP system. The TrustBroker product can also trigger MFA based on if they have any existing sessions. So that's done for user productivity purposes, because it would be annoying if a user kept logging in and out and creating multiple sessions, as some users do, and having to do MFA for every single session. So TrustBroker is able to check whether the user has existing sessions and use that as a way of determining if the MFA is required or not. Now let's talk about the right-hand side. This is where we go into a real risk-based or context-aware environment where TrustBroker is actually calling the SecurityBridge product. So the SecurityBridge Platform product that Holger has described, TrustBroker is making a call to that product to ask it whether MFA is required. And Holger will actually go into more detail and show you how that looks inside the platform in a moment. But let's just talk about a few examples of why that's useful. Because SecurityBridge is running inside your SAP systems, and it's actually monitoring user behavior, it's monitoring threats, it's monitoring everything that happens inside the system, as you saw from the brief demo. Because it's monitoring user behavior, some of those user behaviors might actually be sufficient based on your risk appetite to trigger an MFA challenge. So let's say, for example, the user has an odd login hour. They're normally logging into a system when in the morning at 9 o'clock and logging off at 5 p.m., 9 to 5. Let's say for some reason they log in at 10 p.m. in the evening and they log in from a different country. You could consider that to be something that's potentially concerning. So because SecurityBridge knows about this, because it's monitoring the user behavior, TrustBroker can use that information to trigger an MFA challenge when the user logs in. So as you can see from that example, combining the two products actually becomes very, very powerful. And there's some more examples on the right-hand side there. Is it a new user? So that maybe because the user's only just been created in SAP, you could trigger an MFA challenge because this is the first time they've logged onto the system. And then perhaps every time they log on after that, or the subsequent logons could be using single sign-on. So the powerful capability here is that TrustBroker is controlling authentication, not just during the logon, but when actions are performed after the logon, and it's able to use the benefits of the policy inside SecurityBridge to decide whether MFA is required when those actions are performed. So I'm going to give you a very quick demo now, just so that you can see some of that working. And then we've got a few more things to show you before we wrap up. So let me just share my screen. No. If I click the right button. There it is. Right. So this is a Windows desktop. So I've obviously already logged into Windows. I'm going to use SAP GUI to start with, just as an example, and I want to show my mobile phone screen. So let me just start this application up, which allows me to do a mobile phone screen share, and then you'll be able to see what happens on my phone. So if I start sharing, right, make it a bit smaller. Over here, move that out there. Right. So when I log onto this system, it's going to trigger an MFA challenge using Microsoft Entra MFA, which is the MFA product that I'm using. By the way, we also use other MFA products. Not all customers use Entra. You can use Ping ID, Okta, Duo, RSA, lots of different products out there that we support. So because we're using number matching in Entra, I'm having to enter that number on my phone. You can't see it because of the screen sharing, but now it's asking me for my fingerprint. If it was an iPhone, it would use face, but I've just pressed my finger on the fingerprint reader on my phone, and now it's successfully authenticating me, and I'm now logged in. So that's how a user would log into a SAP system if MFA was being triggered during the logon. And as you've heard from the previous previous slides in the presentation, we can check the authentication and whether to use single sign-on or multi-factor authentication during the logon or after the logon. So what I'm going to do now is to run a transaction SE16. And we have configured SecurityBridge to enforce multi-factor authentication when transactions like SE16 are being run. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to enter the number 38 because it's going to be a successful authentication. And now the SE16 transaction is executed. So that is step-up authentication. I logged into the system and then I'm re-authentication. I'm stepping up to another authentication level when I perform an action. I guess another example, which is probably more common, is that you'd log into the system using single sign-on, and then when you actually run a transaction or perform an action after the login, then it would require MFA. That's probably an easier to understand example of step-up authentication. So there we go. I'm now in SE16, and I'm only able to run SE16 because I was required to use multi-factor authentication, and I was successful. I think maybe now I should hand over to Holger, who can show you what the policy looks like inside the security platform that made all that happen.
Absolutely. And there we will also be able to see how dynamic this capability is. And I also like to complement what you just said, Tim, is the fact that we just want to make sure that when critical things happen or anomalies happen based on the profiling that we have in SecurityBridge, the user profiling that we have there, only then MFA or step-out authentication is triggered to make sure that we have the security in place when it's needed and not every time someone is doing something annoying the users and having a very bad user experience. So here you have the full configuration environment for SecurityBridge. Many things you can configure here. We focus today on just on the MFA part, and there are various policies that you can define. You can have various groups for various systems and so on and so forth. Just to show you the example that we just seen in Tim's demo, right? It's because we have configured these rules that look for certain transactions. And this is a very simple example. Now let's have a look and see what else can we configure here. And you see plenty of other scenarios that we can use here to create policies with, right? So imagine you have certain business functions configured in your GRC environment. We can read those and identify whether a user is still following his business function or he's deriving because he's doing now things he never did before. And these conditions can trigger an MFA, for example. We've seen before critical transactions, critical programs, but also things like, imagine a user didn't log in now for quite a while, or he's logging in outside his normal working hours. Why are we, or how are we knowing that? It's because we know user behavior. We are profiling the user, not to supervise them or whatever. We want to make sure that we understand their behavior, their normal behavior, and can initiate security measures whenever we see deviations from there, right? And we just look at very critical things. Think about certain very critical roles or profiles, or a user that has super rights. These are very, very critical accounts that you want to have special measures for, and also to understand the normal endpoints from where users connect to your SAP systems. Sometimes we already know that a certain terminal is suspicious, and we can then trigger MFA for that, right? And many other things as well. We will continue extending this list based on best practices, but also based on the feedback that we get in the market or from the market. And think about, we want to make sure that this system dynamically understands anomalies and understands deviations from normal behavior, and only then makes sure or challenges the user with an additional authentication or a re-authentication or whatever you want to configure there, including blocking that activity if the request is not performed in the expected way, right? So imagine Tim before was not able to insert or to the right number, right? Then he will not be able to perform that transaction. And this is what you want to make sure. And you can extend this to any other activities. Think about DLP scenarios where you want to make sure that data is not breached, data is not leaving your environment. You can use these capabilities for protecting your data against such malicious activities too. With that, let us go back to our slides and talk about another important thing that changed now that we merged the organizations.
Yeah, thank you, Holger. So from your experience of working with CyberSafe, because most people on this webinar are former CyberSafe customers, you will know that the support that we offered was, firstly, I think, very responsive. We got lots of good feedback about being responsive to customer requests, but it was very simple. We just used email for support. SecurityBridge have a much more comprehensive and very customer-first focus. Lots of different ways of getting support. They have, for example, a portal, so you can log in and access tickets and manage your tickets online rather than using email. You can use email as well. There's a knowledge base, which is something that's very important. It means you can log in and you can search the knowledge base and find information about the product, documentation, known issues. Just so that you know, that isn't actually live yet with the TrustBroker product. It's something that we're not quite ready with yet, but when it is, we will announce it, and then all of the CyberSafe customers will be able to get all of these services when they are requesting support. We definitely, consider customers to become first, and the quality of the support that we offer is fundamental. And that's really what we want to say here. It's just making sure that you're being looked after, and we're there to help, and we want to make sure that all of our customers get the best support possible. I've been on a situation where I've tried to get help from some vendors for products that I've purchased myself for my home use, and I've seen some really, really bad support. I've seen some really, really good support. I want you to understand that SecurityBridge support is going to be top notch and much better than what you've experienced before. Okay.
Good. So with that, we reached almost the end of the webinar. Let's look at the questions we've received. We have quite a few.
Yeah, I think the first one.
Yeah, I will pick up the first one. It's related to SecurityBridge and whether SecurityBridge can also monitor run my jobs from Redwood and the job scheduled there. It's important to understand that we just focus on the security part of that. That means if certain critical things are performed by those jobs, we definitely will see those. We'll definitely alert on those. What I can also say is, because this is a more typical question that customers have, is can they schedule the SecurityBridge jobs with third-party job scheduler? And the answer is yes, for sure. You can do that as well, as our own jobs are also normal things that happen in an SAP system. The next one, Tim, would you like to talk about?
Next question is saying, is CyberSafe covered under existing SecurityBridge licenses? Unfortunately, we haven't decided this yet. It's being discussed, so I don't really want to set expectations wrongly. But I think you're asking, if you're a SecurityBridge customer using the platform product, do you get TrustBroker for free? As I said, we are thinking about pricing and how we offer the product. So I don't want to say yes or no to that one. Apologies, but we've got your details, and we will reach out to you once we've made that decision. Next question from the same person is, how long is MFA authentication valid before users are prompted again? That is fully configurable. Some customers set that to 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever they want. Obviously, the larger the value, there's more risk involved, because if somebody has to re-authenticate with MFA after 4 hours, and within that 4-hour period they walk away from their desk, somebody could come to their desk and perform some action that normally requires MFA, but it won't actually do the MFA because it thinks the user is still at their desk. So there is a risk, and so companies recognize that.
Yeah.
But it's fully configurable. Next question.
It's regarding exactly how SecurityBridge works, where it's hosted, and how it connects to the SAP system that it's monitoring. SecurityBridge is an add-on to an SAP system, right? So it runs on one SAP system in your environment that you defined for that. Whether this is an on-prem system, a cloud system, as long as you can install an add-on there, it will work. And then it connects through an agent infrastructure to the various systems. The normal ABAP-based systems have then a component, a true agent that is installed on that target system and used as a hub to perform all the activities. But for all cloud-based components and environments like BTP or even the SAP S/4HANA public cloud, there we use APIs through the same agent infrastructure to communicate to the systems and retrieve the data that we need. Yeah, it's all plain SAP technology. It's very important. You don't need any extra other component hardware or configuration outside of normal SAP environments.
Okay, the next question is asking, are there any policies or plans for working in irregular locations, i.e. IP whitelisting to enforce MFA, e.g. if you're using an airport Wi-Fi? Yes, there are. The TrustBroker policies actually include checking network addresses, but we generally find that people don't end up using that because, and we also recommend that you consider not doing that because we try to get people to think about zero trust architecture. In a zero trust architecture, you shouldn't be thinking about perimeters or networks. You should be thinking about the endpoints. And in this case, the endpoint is the application, i.e. SAP. The user should be authenticated the same way, regardless of where they're logging on. But again, you've got the option. You can include in that check, you can include the network address. So people can be logging on from different networks and you can change the behavior according to which network they log on from. Next question is, will step authentication also work in the browser? For example, Web GUI Fiori? The answer is yes, definitely. I only showed it with the GUI, but obviously a lot of people are using Fiori and Web GUI and other applications that are browser-based. Yes, TrustBroker supports step-up authentication in those cases as well. There are certain cases where we are adding improvements to the product because it's worth pointing out, which we haven't said yet, that the product is not standing still. We've talked about what the product does today. We are actually doing more things. I think step-up authentication is one big area of innovation in the future. We'll be doing a lot more in that space and adding more step-up authentication capabilities into the products.
Good. Yeah.
No OS-based installation, correct?
Correct. So it's very simple to answer. It's correct. So the agent is also an SAP add-on. So it's nothing on the operating system level. Where we use certain operating system level capabilities is for the technical components like subrouter, web dispatcher, cloud connector, where we use subcontrol to communicate to these components and retrieve the information there. It's simply the standard way to do this. But again, we use there an existing infrastructure. You are not installing anything on the OS level.
Okay. The next question is quite interesting. It says, does CyberSafe support single sign-on in combination with SAP single sign-on or the SAP secure login service for SAP GUI? These are products from SAP that offer single sign-on and have some MFA capabilities. So effectively, you're saying, does CyberSafe offer single sign-on if you're using the SAP product? Or can it work as a standalone solution? Well, to make it clear, I think it's worth summarizing that TrustBroker can work completely instead of the SAP product. You do not need the SAP product if you want to use TrustBroker. So we have customers who have maybe bought or are thinking about buying the SAP single sign-on product, and they buy our product instead, or they upgrade to our product because they've been using the SAP product and they realize that our product has a lot better capabilities with MFA. So we've had that experience. We also can coexist. So you might, for example, use the SAP single sign-on product to give you that single sign-on and log into the system. And then you could use the TrustBroker product for the step-up authentication. So the MFA would happen after the login. In fact, we have a handful of customers who are doing just that. They bought the SAP product, they wanted the MFA, step-up authentication, they bought the TrustBroker product, installed it, and they just use it for step-up authentication. But they're still logging onto the system using the SAP single sign-on product. So effectively, the answer to your question is, yes, we can do that. There are options available. What we'd like to think is that people who have bought the SAP product would potentially keep it and then use the TrustBroker product for MFA, and then gradually move away from the SAP product so they're not paying for both products. But you don't have to do that.
Good.
Next question.
So yeah, there are tons of other questions. We need to look also a little bit at the time, but we see still the people in the session. So let's quickly go through.
Yeah, there's only 2 more questions. Let's see if we can answer these, and then we'll wrap up because we'll run out of time. Would it be possible to configure CyberSafe to only allow a set of users to access SecurityBridge Platform? For example, allow only authorized users to access the global settings.
To configure it to only
TrustBroker is authenticating, so it's not used for access control. But I think what you're saying is when a user logs on to the SecurityBridge platform, you only want certain users to be able to access the settings.
Yeah, I think, Tim, this is a configuration in SecurityBridge where you can manage privileges and authorizations of those users. But for sure, we can also imagine that you will invoke from the TrustBroker perspective certain MFA or other things for those users that access SecurityBridge, right? You have a higher authorization level there. Yeah, so both is doable.
We also plan to add step-up authentication into the SecurityBridge platform. And there was a proof of concept that was implemented earlier this year in the platform for the PAM module, but that's going to be done. That's going to be enhanced significantly next year, I believe.
Just to give one more sentence there is the privilege access management is our module to support customers who want to have a better user experience when they do firefighter sessions, right? So it's an alternative to that. And because it's a very critical action, this was one of the first use cases we implemented where TrustBroker more or less puts that extra layer of authentication for PAM sessions and for auditing, for example, PAM sessions that we also do as part of the workflow there.
Yeah. So the last question is again about support, just clarifying something I talked about on the previous slide. So he says, as of now, CyberSafe support is as it was. SecurityBridge approach is change coming in the future, ? I think the gist of it is that CyberSafe support was through email only. Currently, CyberSafe customers, TrustBroker customers can use email to send support tickets, request support tickets into SecurityBridge. So same approach as before, different email address. That's basically it. However, those same customers can also log into the portal if they want to and actually see their tickets. So if you've got multiple support tickets, you can log in and you can manage the tickets. You can update them inside the portal. So that is available now for all CyberSafe TrustBroker customers. The bit that is coming in future, as it's worded in the question, is the knowledge base and the online documentation. That is going to be added into the portal so that when you're opening a support ticket, you'll be able to search the knowledge base and find out if there's a known issue before you've actually raised a ticket.
Exactly. Yeah. Good. With that, I would say just in case you have further questions after the session, here are a couple of contact options for you to get in contact with us across the globe, or just send us an email, and we are happy to support you and reach out to you. With that, I would say thank you for your attendance. Thank you for staying with us now even longer than expected, and have a great day, and hope that we see you in some other webinars in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.